Hi, I'm Michael Moore here at DSE 2012, and I'm here with Brawn, chairman of DSF, Digital Signage Federation, and we're here to ask him a few questions just about how the show's been going. So, just a very broad question, but how has it gone for you all?
Well, it's a great question, actually. It seems rather obvious, but the truth of the matter is this is the most successful show that the Digital Signage Expo has had. Next year, the Digital Signage Expo will be 10 years old, and so we're kind of in what we call the second phase. And in the early days, the early adopters, the arrows in the back, and all of these kind of people and the problems that they all had, not existent anymore. Right now, it's a matter of huge selection of technologies, huge selection of services and software, and so really it's a matter of almost this cornucopia, this vast buffet of things that we can choose from. And now we're at the point where people are beginning to get application specific. So this show has been wonderful. The booth layout has been good. The way to walk the show and kind of the comfort level of the show, because we've done shows like Infocom and NAB and the CES show, and sometimes the shows are so big they become cumbersome. But this has been a very attendee-friendly show. The booths have been set up that way, and they're beautiful, of course, as you've seen during your tour around the show. But it's really been a positive experience, and we've had the attendees have been very, very, very good. And most importantly, honestly, the attendees are asking good questions, which show that they're learning about digital signage technologies and what they can do for you. So if you listen to the questions you're being asked at the show, you can pretty much tell how successful a show is and the level of the attendees. Going great guns in 2012 at DSE.
Well, that's great to hear. You spoke a little bit about the question asking and the learning part of it. Can you speak to the education that's been provided here at this show as far as seminars and things like that?
Actually, another great question. This is all about education, and everybody's going to say that. In fact, it often sounds trite, but in digital signage, it's a real interesting thing. It's a very complex weave of technologies that we deal in, both technologies and service. Then you throw in content into the mix, and you throw in business models, because a lot of people have an ad-based revenue system, and you got to make money off of digital signage, and so it gets to be very complex. Well, if that's true, and it is, then the issue is we've got to have education to support it. We've got two levels of education here that I think are certainly worthy of note. I have helped as a volunteer with the Digital Signage Expo to help create an educational curriculum that addresses the needs of the digital signage community. In that regard, we try to drill down into the details of what we call the 7 key elements: hardware, software, connectivity, content, management, operations, design, and then business, which are the 7 key elements. And we try to make sure that people understand the connectivity between all of the elements. So the courses are set up in that regard. The second area is we have the Digital Signage Experts Group, and we have the Digital Signage Certified Experts Program, we have the Digital Signage Network Experts Program, and the Digital Signage Display Experts Program. In the Digital Signage Certified Experts program, we have over 6,500 graduates in 61 countries as of this year. So you marry the wonderful show layout and the friendly environment, you marry that to the Digital Signage Expo curriculum that directly addresses the needs of the attendees, and then you throw in a certification program that's industry recognized. We are all about education, and we've got to be, because the #1 problem in digital signage today, by every analysis, is a lack of understanding of what all of these various components will do when added together. So a big thumbs up to what's going on here from an educational perspective.
Okay, so obviously we're talking about DSE, but I'm going to let you give a little pitch here for DSF, because I know you're doing some online education classes, and I mean, that's awesome, and I'll give you a chance to tell people just a little bit about those. You want to do that?
Sure, I get my sales pitch. Thank you very much. This is the payoff for the interview. But seriously, I've known Gary Kay and the folks at rAVe for a lot of years, and we have a deep respect for what you guys do. I kind of laughingly tell Gary that he and the rAVe team are literally the mouthpieces of the industry, and I mean that in the most affectionate of terms. And one of the things that they've been very supportive about, as of the other people have been supportive about, is notifying people about what the Digital Signage Federation is all about. Well, the Digital Signage Federation is an impartial, agnostic, vendor-neutral, and a nonprofit organization. And what's unique about the Digital Signage Federation is that we address the full constituency of the digital signage market, all the way from the distributors and the manufacturers to the content aggregators and the marketing people and the content creators and ultimately the end users. So we have about 11 or 12 constituencies in the digital signage industry that we address. So the Digital Signage Federation, if you take a look at our board of directors, I'm the chairman of the board this year, very fortunate, I'm proud to be that, and I'm an industry consultant in the educational world, educating people about digital signage. Our vice chairman owns one of the largest healthcare media networks in the world, a guy named Phil Cohen with Care Media Holdings. Our secretary treasurer is a lady who happens to have a company called Saddle Ranch Digital, and she's in content creation business. We have people on the board all the way from advertising to end users. Our past chairman, Bob Stowe, director of marketing for Wendy's. So that's the constituency. And the good thing about the Digital Signage Federation is we're into advocacy, we're into outreach, we're into the idea of promoting, and not just promoting, but educating the digital signage community. And we do it not only for the members, but we make this available for people who are not even our members. And so I'm very proud to be involved with the DSF, and it's just growing by leaps and bounds. We've had about a 40% increase in membership. All of the major display companies, all of the major hardware companies and content creation companies belong, and we're very proud of our growth. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to do the DSF sales pitch.
Yeah, no problem. So now a little bit more about the show. What have you seen walking around the show floor when you haven't been busy, which I had to track you down to interview? You're a busy man. But what have you seen and what have you heard from attendees that's almost like trending this year? What's been popular and talked about amongst everyone?
Well, that's really people who are trend experts. They like to talk about the obvious. I'm going to try to dig beneath the surface a little bit for you and the rAVe audience, and it's this. At this particular show, as we look at trends, we look at hardware trends. Well, the easy thing is we're getting thin bezel LCDs and they're LED illuminated on the back. So, okay, call that a trend if you'd like. We've got other advances in software applications. They're becoming much more easier, much more user-friendly, and things like that. But we could go on and on with the obvious trends. Let's dig underneath the covers for the rAVe group just a little bit. There's a huge trend in our industry for analytics. Again, I've got a good friend of mine who happens to be our vice chairman, and he talks about the impressions. He gets really angry when people talk about the impressions of digital signage. I've got 500,000 people that walk by a screen. He says, Alan, what does that mean? It means nothing. He says, Alan, impressions without recall is meaningless. And he doesn't talk about content being king. He talks about the message being king. I personally use the word objectives, but he calls the message being king. And so the trend that is not quite so obvious is that we're on a crusade in this show today and in the industry to understanding more the impact of the message. And as Phil Cohen, our vice chair, will say, he will tell you that each individual silo, whether it's in his healthcare industry or whether it's in entertainment or whatever, is going to have a different message. And he preaches the gospel of being able to analyze that, and then he uses the phrase, I want you to prove it. So he has to have proof to people so that they can come back and say, I'm not just talking about impressions, that means nothing. I'm going to talk about recall, I'm going to talk about these things. So audience analytics and being able to evaluate post and sometimes pre-digital signage installation, a huge trend. Second huge trend is going to be things like near-field communications and things like that, where I take my cell phone out, I put it up against the screen, and automatically it ports over. But not just that, it's the whole issue of having the big screen, the smartphone, the tablet, and that interconnectivity. The third and final kind of underlying trend, rather than the obvious, is the obvious implementation of digital signage, and not a good word in this case. We don't know what to call it yet, but digital signage in education and how we can take digital signage technologies and make these 40-person classrooms more manageable as if they're 15-person classrooms. So it's this kind of trend that we're seeing, which is not the obvious. So hopefully the rAVe viewers will understand that we've got obvious things on the surface with bigger displays, and we've got things like nanolumens and displays that will wrap around cylinders, and we've got better software programs and all of this. And these are the obvious things, but the underlying trends, audience analytics, interactivity, digital signage in education and in applications that weren't very clear before, that's where we're going, and those are the trends that you ought to be aware of.
So, speaking of other things that aren't so obvious, I talked to somebody here while I was looking for you earlier, and they told me a little bit about something that you've been talking to people about, which is this concept that, you know, you have these digital signage people who want to provide digital signage, but there's also people that have been providing signage for companies, for small businesses, big businesses for years, right? And they've got the sales force out there. Can you tell me about the idea that maybe you should partner with other signage people who've been doing your normal signs forever? Because I heard that that's something that y'all have been talking about a little bit last year, and then this year it's even become a bigger thing.
Probably the best question that can be asked and answered, honestly, and it's not obvious at all. Although when I explain it to you, you're probably going to go, duh, this is really kind of obvious. The truth of the matter is this. You've got two distinct industries in signage. You got the traditional sign industry, and then you've got what properly should be called the dynamic digital signage industry. By the way, in this traditional sign industry, they think digital signage refers to signs that are printed digitally. Now, think about this. Digital signage is not going to eliminate static signs, traditional signs in any way, shape, or form. As you and I are looking around the area around here, we see more static signs in the show at a digital signage show than we even do digital signs. So let's be honest with each other. We're not going to have the traditional sign industry go away. But the digital signage industry is going to add value to the static or the traditional sign industry. So our next big market push, well, I don't have to sell anybody at the DSE on the concept of digital signage being exciting. You've got more excitement on this floor. I mean, we're almost at the show close right now, and you got booths that are fairly active and almost full. Usually they fall off at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We got a lot of activity if you walk the show floor now at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But what happens is, it's the static sign industry, and we've got to go and proselytize and preach the gospel of digital signage being something that's not going to take the place of their business, but it's going to expand their business. We're going to be going to the ISA show, the big International Sign Association show. The DSF is going to have a nice booth. We've created a 7-class curriculum on digital signage that addresses the needs of the static sign industry. So my forecast, if you will, is that you are going to see the next big growth curve, and it's not going to happen in a year. It's going to happen over 2 or 3 years. You're going to see the static sign industry just literally adopt their part of it. They have the relationships, they understand dynamics, they understand color, they understand impact, and they hang signs. So it's a natural adjunct to what we do in the dynamic digital sign industry, and this is going to be a 20 to 30% adder to their business. So yeah, this is a trend that is absolutely positively on target.
I can't remember who it is right now. I saw it in the new product pavilion where they actually combined the traditional signage with the digital signage on the. It's almost
the transparent LCD.
No, not even that. It's even simpler than that. It's I think it was Delphi where I think we can actually see it right over there.
Ah, yeah.
Where it's got the old school where you write on it with a chalkboard, and then the kind of new school where you actually have the digital signage on it, which I thought was really cool.
Right.
Because it does really combine the two, and it still has the personal feeling to it. So what can you say to people who maybe are in the digital signage industry that may have decided not to come to this show or opted out of it? You know, what did they miss, or what kind of appeal can you make to them that this is where digital signage is going to grow? Like at this trade show, this is the trade show to go to.
Well, I'm certainly not here to to try to sell the Digital Signage Expo concept, but obviously I'm a huge fan of it. The reason you ought to attend this show is the same reason years ago in the early days that you wanted to attend InfoComm. It was the day and age in the early days of InfoComm. That's where all the products were released. That's where all of the interconnections and the networking, and I mean networking in terms of person-to-person networking, took place. Well, in our our particular industry of digital signage, we're still on the kind of the terrible 2 stage of that hockey puck or that hockey stick growing in the market. And what we have here is, yes, we got flat panel displays and things like that, but it's how the flat panel displays are integrated into networks. It's how the software works. It's how the applications work. It's how the content all works. So if you're not here, you can't read a brochure and see what you and I have seen here, and I think you would admit that. You can't see what you've seen here. You can't literally immerse yourself into individual types of technologies and types of applications. You can't do that from a distance. And then finally, you're not going to have the availability. I mean, they record all the sessions, the educational sessions, and that's great. That's just phenomenal. But you know as well as I do, there's a heck of a difference between sitting there in a classroom here and interacting with fellow attendees than taking something online, and I applaud them for doing the online thing. But some trade shows are kind of over the top. You take a CES, for example, it's an event. It's not something, I mean, it's kind of like an experience. Like, man, did you go to CES? Wow, there were 130,000 people there. At this particular show, 4,000, 5,000 people. Wonderful booths supported by all of the major manufacturers, but you get to see the nuances of digital signage. Can't see it any other way at any other show anywhere in the world. So this is the place to be, and next year, 2013, is the 10th anniversary of the Digital Signage Expo.
Well, I'm sure it'll be a big one. Again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us, and I look forward to seeing you, I guess, at InfoComm.
We'll see you at InfoComm. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you much.